Welcome back to that rugby podcast with your boy Luke and your boy Husey. We are back again. Look, first week of international rugby for 2025, and you know what?
It into my veins.
Some things, they start the new year and they go, new year, new me. But new year, same old fucking Wales. If I've ever seen it, I've ever heard it, if I ever saw something that I sat there and watched, and I watched the whole game, what a miserable game that was for the Welsh. So, Six Nations kicked off. We're going to run through those first games, the first games that happened over the weekend, run through what's coming up this weekend. We've also got a little bit about the English rugby and what's going down over here at the moment, a bit about the broadcasting deal in Australia that's just been landed, and then some Super Rugby stuff to finish off. But yes, Six Nations kicked off in France with the French absolutely destroying the Welsh.
Demolishing the Welsh. 43-0, comprehensive dismantling. It was an embarrassing moment in French history where the French landed an invasion force in the late 1700s on the coast of Wales, and they were beaten back by a village of fishermen. Right? I think the French were channeling that in this game as revenge for that. Because this was just brutal.
Yeah, look, I sat there and watched it, and I know Ben Youngs, I think, made a video on this recently, but the Welsh attack has to be some of the worst attack I've ever seen in my history of watching rugby. I think I could have teached a grade of under 15 players how to attack better and build a game plan better than the Welsh did. I just sat there and I watched it and I went, you could see when it was coming out the back or going short. When it went out the back player was so deep, it was like they were playing league, but they had no pace on it. And then all their outsides were flat as fuck. And I just sat there and I went, when they started resorting to kicks to kind of get over the gain line, you know that your attack is now null and void. And there's talks like, it's a rebuilding time for the Welsh. They've got some young players coming through. They need to... I totally understand that and I can get that. But the cattle isn't that bad. Like, you look at their teams in the URC that compete with South African teams, they are competing. They are still working really hard. They're still doing really well in that competition. So I go, it's not like these players don't know how to play rugby. I just sat there and I went, so there's two things to me. And if I target one old rugby head, I probably need to target the second one now. I said, and I've said it multiple times, the game's gone from Eddie Jones. Like, the game has left him. It's gone too far forward. And I think I'm about to make something that may be a heinous statement, but I think Warren Gatland's right up at the same thing. Because I sat there and I went, they look like they didn't have a game plan on attack. And I was like, 43 points conceded, I can understand against the French who were at their best at points. And I go, were the French at their best or were they just playing Wales? But the 0 points and never looked like scoring, I just went... Has the game gone past Gatland? Is it time to admit that he's not the coach he once was. The game has moved on since that, and it's gone past him.
Australian rugby was lacerated under Eddie Jones, and the most embarrassing loss in that time was a 40-6 loss to Wales. I think that's pretty well undisputed there. This is worse than that. I don't think it's unfair to say what you said about Gatland. And I think as well, he came to... Remember, a couple of years ago, he said if he knew it was this bad, he wouldn't have taken the job. I think he saw this as coming in and continuing what he'd done before and not realizing the depth it had plummeted to. And I don't... And he's probably not the man for the job to help them climb out of those depths. We see it all the time in... the NFL, right? You need to sometimes absolutely revolutionize a team or a franchise. You need a young, innovative coach in there. And then there are other teams that are sort of on the cusp that need an older, steadier head to sort of right things and fix the culture a little bit. I think that's what we've seen with Schmidt. Schmidt has come in to sort of steady the ship in Australia, reset the culture. And that's why, there's all this news, there's all this talk about him staying, extending for another 2 years or departing at the end of this year. It may not necessarily be the worst thing for him to leave at the end of this year or to take a step back and for a younger coach to come in there. Les Kiss is I think the sort of preferred candidate at this point, but we could see some other younger heads in there as well who are then ready to take Australia to that next step. um, after Schmidt has sort of righted the ship, got the culture back to where it needs to be, gotten the hard work back into Australia, not all the sort of flash and panache of Eddie Jones. So, you know, Wales, I don't think, you know, it may be a cultural issue, but Gatland's not the right person to fix it, or it may be that they don't need a culture fix. They need someone who can adapt um, a game plan to suit the needs of the team that they have. You know, Gatland could be rooted in this is the team I had back in the day. This is what worked for them. Why isn't it working for this new team? Instead of thinking, how do I change? So instead of thinking, how do I change my players to suit my game plan? How do I change my game plan to suit my players?
Yeah, totally. And I understand there's a lot wrong with Welsh rugby at the moment. Like, this isn't just a Gatland problem, but what I saw on the weekend was a Gatland problem to me. Like, the attack was so null and void. It was so lackadaisical. There was only one man who put his hand up for the whole Welsh team, in my opinion. That was Jack Morgan. Other than that, the rest of them, I mean, I know they're trying hard, but I don't think they're getting put in positions to win games. Like, that's how bad the attack was. I just sat there and I was like, they can't continue to do this in the Six Nations because they won't score a single point. That's how bad it was. French, obviously, on their end, a very good start, very promising look to them, but then they have the old red card from Roman Intamuck, who is going to miss at least 2, if not 3 games, is the assumption, with a shoulder straight to the face. So I go, look, France will take the 5 points. Again, I think Wales is one of those teams, they got fight. They'll never stop fighting.
Yeah.
But they just didn't have the polish. Second game was the Scots against the Italians. Look, it was an interesting game. Scots came out of the blocks flying, absolutely flying, scoring tries left, right, and centre. Then the Italians scoreboard pressure, and that's what this Italian team is, especially after the World Cup and the loss to the All Blacks. I think they've started to do really well, is understand that you don't have to win a game by scoring lots of tries. Keep it in the game, staying tight.
Yeah.
They did that well. Look, the Scottish team is class, I think. Got the win. Again, it wasn't to the level I still expected. Like, it wasn't a 43-0 win. But, again, this Italian team last year knocked over a couple of teams in drew with France. They could beat some teams in this comp, so you have to take the 5 points away from them. The Scots did that really well and set up a juicy clash this week.
Yeah, you know, the playing in Murrayfield always a daunting prospect for any team. Um, yeah, look, you picked the Scots to win the Six Nations this year, I believe, or to come second. Maybe you picked them to do well.
Yep.
I think you said if there's any year that's set up for the Scots to win, it's this year. Well, they started on the right path.
Yeah, totally. And then the last game was the English against the Irish. The English came out of the blocks against strong, 10-5 at halftime, I think it was, and just couldn't hold on. A great second half from the Irish. Look, we discussed this heavily in the last podcast. It was like, this game could mean quite a lot down the road. And it came out, and in that first half, I was like, this is England. This is what we said. They're scary. They could beat some teams. They're in this again. But good old England, they've found a way to fucking lose some games recently, and they did it again this time. The Irish first half performance was that Irish towards the end of last year, where everyone was like, what is going on? Like, normally this fucking green wall just beats everyone and just keeps rolling. Yeah. Second half was very much like that, watching them win. Get some big plays from James Lowe, Bundy Arkey, running over some players. Jameson Gibson Park had a fantastic game as well. Whoa, wait. 3 top players, all from New Zealand. Oh, interesting that. Sorry. But yeah, the Irish, again, looking really good. If they can carry that second half form in, they'll be a very hard, that second half kind of form that they played, they'll be a hard team to beat. Like, I watched it and I was like, oh, I think I jumped off the Irish a little bit too early seeing that second half. But England, again, in these games, they just lose the big moments. And again, leads on from what they did at the end of last year. When you look at the game against Aussie, game against New Zealand, they just didn't get the win, but they were in the fight.
Yeah, there's also, as I understand it, and maybe more prominent over where you are, but some more refereeing incidents and controversies in this game, with our man Ben O'Keefe at the helm there, and again, it seems like inconsistency in calls seems to be the big thing with high shots. I think there was one called on Ellis Genge, but one not called on, was it Ringrose or no, Kalen Doris, that wasn't called, that people thought should have been called. Um, you know, we always say that if you put yourself in a position to have one missed call decide the game for you, you haven't put yourself in a position to win. But I can understand where the frustration comes from with the inconsistency of calls.
Yeah, and I always think those high shots, I take that away from the referees. I go, that's if a TMO's to do his job, that's like literally the one thing he's realistically looking out for is dangerous play.
Yeah.
They've got to step in there. I didn't see it live. I know there was talk about it. I didn't see it live when I was watching it, but I may have just missed it or not seen the replays and stuff. But to me, I don't think, as you said, England didn't lose this game because of the ref. They got on the wrong side of the ref. They definitely did. But I don't think they lost the game because of the ref. They showed they got on the wrong side of the ref from the first half. Like, they were still on the wrong side of the ref at the first half. So I go, they lost it in that second half with some missed tackles on the wing and some key defensive errors.
Didn't O'Keefe say something like, we're here to play rugby, or we're going to play rugby, something like that? I think that's a great crack at at the players, And I will say, I did notice from the England clash with Australia last year in the tour, very whingy side in England. Perhaps they've been watching too much Premier League, but I do like that from O'Keefe, and I respect that we're here to play rugby, or we're going to play rugby, whatever it was he said. Love that. That's a great line. That's I think one of the all-time refereeing quotes, and I think that needs to be, not to go on a rant about referees, but that's got to be the attitude of the game and the officials. Is we're here to play rugby, not to sit in a tribunal, or not here to ponder over decisions and go through step by step contract obligations, all this sort of nonsense. We're here to play rugby, or we're going to play rugby, whichever one of those two it is. They both sound great, so either way he said it is good. That's up there with some of the all-time refereeing quotes.
Yeah, nice. Looking into the week ahead, we have what has been the perennial battle for the spoon, Italy versus Wales, but now it's like, can Wales get a win? Like, I think this is it's going to be like the counting the days, can Wales get a win, which you used to do to Italy, but that's the position we find ourselves in at the moment. I don't see any way. If Wales come up the same way they came out last week, Italy beat them by 30, if not 40.
Yeah,
I think
playing
again.
in Italy as well, so big advantage for the Azzurri.
Yep. So there's that one. England host the French, which is going to be tasty. Like, England coming off the back of Ireland. Can they right the wrongs? The French looked really good. Who's going to be playing fly half? My guess with Jalbert not getting on with the coach, it's going to probably be Thomas Ramos, and they'll file someone else into the fullback position. But we'll wait and see there. Who do you think wins this one?
To be honest, I think France. England was my sneaky pick to win the Six Nations, but that was very contingent on their performance against the Irish. I did not see enough, have not seen enough from the English to think that they can win this one. Now, we have said France definitely play better at home than they do abroad, right? So there's every chance England wins this one. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a very similar scoreline to the Irish-English clash. Probably something like 28-21, or something like 31-24, something like that, or a close penalty or a converted try in it. Like, I don't think the scoreline difference will be more than 7 points.
Yeah, and England have done that really well. They stay in games, they fight, they're not going to give up, and they keep games really close.
Yeah.
The issue is they don't win those games.
Yeah, and look, last year they played France in France and only lost by 2 points.
Yeah.
Like, that was a very close one. That was the final week of the competition, and I don't believe there was any DuPont there for France at that time. So that is a big, big game changer for the French as well.
Look, I look at this and I go, England need to win this. If they didn't win the Irish game, they know they need to win this one. And I always go, if there's going to be a game that they need to win and that they have to win, and it's not Scotland, again, that kind of counts up their Six Nations, whatever happens against Scotland. But I think they need to win this so badly that they finally pull one out of the hat. and they actually win this one. And I only say that because I think, again, they've been close in all these games and they haven't found ways to win it.
Yeah.
I think they find a way to beat the French here. Last game of the round is Scotland versus Ireland, a massive clash in Murrayfield.
Yeah, huge.
Where are you looking here? I don't even know how to start. Like,
I know. Look, these last two games, the England, France, Scotland, Ireland. This, like the outcomes of these two games, pretty much determines the rest of the Six Nations, other than the Ireland France clash in the fourth week, and that's being hosted in Ireland, so give the advantage to Ireland there. With this game specifically, as you said about Scotland, this is the year for them to show that they are for real, that they can win this Six Nations. You know, Ireland are coming off a decent but not amazing performance against England, and that's in Ireland, right? I think the Scottish could take this. Now, the Scottish have let me down before. You know, last year against South Africa, they let me down. But Ireland is not South Africa. And, you know Ireland was ranked number 1 in the world, and they like to lord that over the South Africans. But let's just be totally honest. The Irish test side does not scare anyone as much as the South Africa test side does. Let's be perfectly honest about that. I don't care what your World Rugby rankings say. South Africa scares me more than Ireland. So, you know, in that Scotland losing to Ireland losing to South Africa last year in Murrayfield, and getting beaten pretty comprehensively, that I put that down to South African aura. Last year was the year of the Springbok. This year, though, there's a different aura in town. It wears a kilt. It wears tartan. It's got blue face paint on. I'm picking the Scots here to win this one and to upset the apple cart of the Six Nations a little bit.
yeah, look, I like what you're saying, and I agree. I think this is another one that I look back last year, I believe it was, where Scotland played like France in Murrayfield, and they lost in the last minute where the ball was not over the ground but was over the ground, and it was controversial circumstances, whatever you want to say.
I remember that one.
And I think this is that game this time up, and if Scotland can win this game, they know they can win the Six Nations. Obviously, they've got two big challenges ahead of them, which is France and England as well. But I think if they beat Ireland, like I don't even know when the last time they beat Ireland was. Actually, did they beat them last year? They may have.
No, they came very close. It was 17-13 in Ireland.
So yeah. I sit there and I go, yeah, look, I've picked the Scots. I'm going to back the Scots, but it really depends what Ireland turn up. Like if the Ireland of the second half turned up against England and the way they were playing and running the ball there, it's going to be really hard to see them losing this game. Who they start at fly half will be interesting for Irish as well, because I thought Crowley was a good injection over Prendergast when he came on. So look, lots of talking points. I think that is the game of the round to me, is if who can take that really sets themselves up for a shot at a Six Nations crown.
Yeah, I'm looking here for the last time Scotland beat Ireland. It's been a while. I'm back to 2019 at this point, and they still haven't beaten them, but they've all been extremely close. So, yeah, look, it would be definitely bucking history for Scotland to win this one. But hey, as you said, if Scotland is ever going to do it, it's this year. Okay, so it was 2017 the last time Scotland beat Ireland. A game in Scotland, they won 27-22.
Jesus.
So 8 years ago.
There we go.
History's repeating itself.
Yeah, that's what we're banking on. Just to wrap up kind of the Six Nations part of this, I obviously live in England, in the UK. It's interesting, like, watching that game, they have failed to finish games, in my opinion, and recently Ballfoot's gone from Jamie George to Mario Itoje as captain of the team. And it was another time they fell on the bad side of the referee. And especially when times got tough, they seemed to crumble against Ireland, they did. And they have crumbled in the end of year tours and not won games. So I just kind of go, there's now getting this level of, I don't want to say aura because it's not even an aura, a level of belief that they, when the times get tough, they get going, and they need to turn that around real fast. And it's not like they are a weak-minded team. I'm not saying that at all. But they have failed to finish against a good team since they won their Ireland drop goal against Marcus Smith, and they've had a lot of close games. I look back at the All Blacks one with George Ford, a drop goal away from winning it. A lot of questions about their attack. Wallabies game as well. Again, a lot of questions about their attack, but to me, the biggest thing they need to sort out is how their leadership from ball flick gets onto the playing field, and that is through Itoje, and how Itoje, again, that was his first time being captain. I totally understand it's a daunting prospect. How that comes across as well to the team, and how that comes across to the referees, because they definitely found themselves on the wrong side of Ben O'Keefe compared to the Irish. And I think the Irish, and I look at a player like Caelan Doris, who's captain of Ireland, reminds me very much of Richie McCaw. He always seems to be in the wrong places, but never getting in trouble for it, and does it very, very well. And this isn't me having a dig at him, because I'm a big believer. You look at someone like Fraser McWright, Michael Hooper as well. The best sevens understand how to cheat and not get caught. Like, that is your role as a seven, is understand how you can get to the ball and do the best, even if it encompasses cheating and not getting caught. So I go, Caelan Doris does it really well. I want to start to see Itoje get that from his team out of it. And I'm not saying you have to cheat, but I'm just saying, like, how do we get that leadership to lead that English side to a win? And I think this is why I've picked England this week, because I think they need a win. I think you look at changing captain, you look at the leadership structure, you look at Borthwick's reign. He's got this team playing decent rugby, like top 5 in country in the world rugby, but he's got to beat those teams. He's got to start beating those teams. That starts to build that culture of winning. He needs that to get started. So there'll be, because the more and more this goes on, there'll be calls for his heads, and I don't think it's the right decision for him to go. But English rugby is ruthless. We've seen it with Eddie Jones. So I go,
it's reminiscent of Dave Rennie. You know, you could see the positives of what he was bringing, but he just wasn't able to convert it into wins. You know, and he was sacked before his time, before he had a chance to fully implement his vision. And yeah, I'm getting those same vibes from the Borthwick coaching legacy for England.
And a great comparison to it. You know, you look at Rennie, like, who was the captain under Rennie, and then you had Hooper, and then you had Hooper leaving, and then you had Eddie Jones coming and name 7 different captains. It's like, to make a captain change is one decision. For it not to reflect onto the field, like if Mario Itoje had stood up in that moment and been able to get the ref back on the side and been able to get his players understanding what they needed to do to not give away penalties and won that game against Ireland, would have been a massive step, I think, in the whole culture of England. So the next few weeks are going to tell the story for the English rugby and how their culture and leadership go forward heading into British National Series and then the World Cup. So interesting times in English rugby, I think. And again, you're always going to be under scrutiny in the English media and with being an English rugby side or any sports side in England. So it's just, how can they deal with that and how can they turn that into wins is a big, I think, note for them to go forward. But some fantastic news out of Australia rugby, as we just mentioned there, my friend. A broadcasting deal coming in. Talk to us more about this.
Yeah, let me pull up the numbers here for the broadcasting deal. But Rugby Australia is either on the verge or has signed a new broadcasting deal with Channel 9 and Stan, you know, as part of the same entity, with the new broadcast deal to be a 5-year, $210 million deal, which is an increase from the current deal, which I believe is 140 million.
Yeah, around that.
It was a 5-year, 140 million deal. Plus, there are incentives if the Australian teams perform well over that time as well. So this deal includes, and I think a big part of the reason why it's increased is the 2027 Rugby World Cup, which we know is going to get eyes on it, as well as the 2029 Women's Rugby World Cup as well. So that's definitely going to get eyes on it as well. This is fantastic news for Rugby Australia, who I think many people were anticipating to have a lower or needing to accept a lower number in the broadcast deal with Channel 9 or Rugby Australia. But I think it's a testament to the culture shift that Schmidt has brought in the last year, and the debacle, moving on from the debacle that is Eddie Jones. The strength of women's rugby as well cannot be understated in that. Super Rugby women's, the Rugby Sevens, you know, all of it has combined. So I know a lot of the focus will be on the Wallabies and Australian Super Rugby, but there's there's several other players in this. And look, could be a much needed injection of funds for Rugby Australia to go into some more grassroots programs to develop space to retain key talent as well. I think is a big one. So yeah, I think it's very positive for Rugby Australia.
Yeah, and I think they get, I don't know what the number and how it results, but 100 million straight from World Rugby for the World Cup hostage as well. So
Yeah.
some big figures coming in for Australian rugby just when they need them. I know Peter V'landys has jumped out and said a few more comments as well, which is always good because now you've got no Hamish McLennan in your corner. It's just a lot of him talking and no answering, which is kind of what you want when you're starting to get yourself back into the rugby wars, as I would say. And I think, we're about to talk about Super Rugby, but if you have a few good Super Rugby seasons come together, I know obviously the Rebels leaving hurts, but does it hurt? We'll see. So yeah, look, exciting times in the world of Australian rugby. Let's talk about Super Rugby. Two topics we want to cover today. Our first topic is our table predictor. So what I'm doing here, we obviously predicted who we think will win it. I predicted the Blues. You predicted your Waratahs, I believe, if I'm not incorrect, because you're obviously one-eyed and have no idea what's going on in the world. But I'm going to run through what I think the table looks like, remembering that there's only 6 finalists this year out of the 11 teams. And I'll give you a bit of reasoning about why I've made my decisions. But my table looks like this. The Blues will win the round-robin play, and that will lead them to a finals win because then everything will go through Eden Park, and we all know how hard it is to win in Eden Park. Chiefs, I've got second. It's no coincidence that 1 and 2 are the 2 fly halves for the All Blacks. That is Bowden Barrett, Damien McKenzie's team. Okay, 3, the Hurricanes. Now you'll sit there and you'll go, wait, they don't have a fly half, the Hurricanes. What are you talking about? Brent Cameron's got a knee injury. Well, we've decided that we don't need a fly half because we've got the best 9 in the world. Yes, I said it, in the world. You want me here to repeat it? In the world. Cam Roigard, better than Antoine Dupont. Heard it here first. So he's going to take us to glory into 3rd position. 4th position, your Waratahs. Yes, I have them turning the season around from last to 4th, getting into the finals, being able to play that round of finals. 5th, I've gone the Reds. I still think the Reds are a very strong team. What we saw them just do against Bristol, they've added a couple of pieces from the Rebels that I really liked, and I can't see them dropping. I think their front row is fantastic. Alex Hodgman, Jeffrey Tuamanga-Allen, a few more names in there. They've got that young under-20s one that is already coming up and played for the Wallaby A's and whatever his name is.
And he benches like 200 kilos.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. So he'll be playing at some point.
Massimo or something like that.
That's the one. Number 6, and this was really hard for me to do, but I don't see them missing finals 2 years in a row. And I've gone the Crusaders. It's a team in the dark horse. I think they've built a year after Rob Penny. I think Cody Taylor been in fine form. You get Scott Barrett playing. I think they rewrite their wrongs. They get into 6th. They'll still lose some games that you don't expect a Crusaders team to lose, but I think they finish 6th. 7th, I've gone the Force. I really like what they're building. I think this is another year where they get really close and just miss out. 8th, I've gone Moana. Moana are definitely going to beat some teams. Artie Savia, captain, running them up. Yeah. I actually, in my first time I did this, when I was running for it, I had them as 6 as a real shock, but I couldn't go above Crusaders and Force. The big drop, and this one is probably a surprise to everyone. Where are the Brumbies? The Brumbies are at 9th, and this is totally where I see myself going wrong. If anything changes, Brumbies finish 4th, and you push everyone down. Could easily happen. I just don't think the Brumbies didn't add much talent from the Rebels, whereas everyone else did. I think they're going to have a harder time this year trying to beat some of these teams. So I've gone them 9th. 10th, it's the Drua. I think they take a step back without Mick Byrne as the coach. And I think it's Glenn Jackson, who's taking over. I don't see them having such a good year. I don't see the Fortress Fiji holding up against some of those better teams. They haven't added much in terms of talent from what I've seen, but that's the Drua way. They just pull talent out of their arse, and then all of a sudden we've got superstars. 11th, yes, you go, what? A New Zealand team finishing 11th? Yeah, I just don't think the Highlanders have enough talent. They lost to beat Moana Pacifica in pre-season by 2 recently without Artie Savia playing. I know the Highlanders wouldn't have had all their numbers. I just think this is a youthful team, And I think that, again, I think this is one of those ones where we'll get to the end of the season and all 5 to 11 could qualify for the finals. Like, I'm not saying Highlanders finish last by, like, winning one game. I think they win 4-ish games, and I think it's, like, bonus points and everything in there comes involved.
Aaron Smith's gone now as well. So
well, he was gone last year as well, so that's why they sucked anyway.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But he came back for New Zealand. That's right. I remember there was a return. Because they played a game at Forsyth Park then, didn't they? The All Blacks last year. I feel like I saw him getting waved off at Forsyth. Maybe I'm just casting my mind back to 2023 and I'm just geriatric.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I may be wrong as well. But
yeah. Hey, well, we'll go through my list. Slightly different to yours. So I have the Blues in first again. But I'm going to go through my top 4 and then I'm going to say how I see the finals playing out.
Yeah.
I got the Blues at 1, got the Tars at 2, got the Chiefs at 3, and I got the Canes at 4. And the way I see this happening is I see a Waratahs Hurricanes final in Sydney because the Hurricanes will beat the Blues in Eden Park. They'll pull off the impossible. They couldn't get it done at home last year, but they'll get it done in Eden Park this year to right the wrongs of last year. Then they'll go to the final against the Waratahs and lose. That's how I see it playing out.
All right.
Yeah. Then I have.
I'll be flying back for that. If that happens, I'm on a plane and I'm coming to watch the game live, and I'm coming back for that.
I have the Brumbies at 5th. Now, I hear what you're saying about them not adding so much talent. I don't think they needed to. I think they had a great roster last year that was very competitive with all teams in the competition, Australia and New Zealand. So I can't see the Brumbies dropping out of finals contention. I think this happens to the Brumbies every year. Everyone underrates them. And it's because they can't win a championship. So hence why I'm not picking them to win the competition, but I still think they'll be in there for the finals. They'll be there. They're a perennial contender. They just can't get over the line. Then I have, now this next one was hard, but I agree with your logic of the Crusaders can't miss the finals 2 years in a row. So I have the Crusaders just pipping the Reds. Now, the reason I say this is because the Crusaders have got the Highlanders and Moana Pacifica in their division. So they've got a slightly easier time of it than the Reds do. Whereas the Reds have got the Waratahs, the Brumbies, the Drua, and the Force. And all of those teams, the other 3 Aussie teams, have gotten arguably stronger. Or even if the Brumbies have stayed flat, the Brumbies were still very strong last year, but the Tars and the Force have gotten stronger. So I see the Reds just missing out, and I think this will be a case where it'll be a bonus point differential, where the Crusaders will just smash Moana Pacifica or Highlanders by so much in one game that they get a bonus point that pips them over the Reds. So 7th, they've got Reds. Now, initially, I had Moana Pacifica down at 10th, but then you brought up Ardie Savia, and I remembered, Ardie Savia is in Moana Pacifica now, and that's dragged them up to 8th in my mind there as well, because it's Ardie Savia. You know, he's going to make some plays. They're going to get some wins against teams that probably shouldn't drop games. You know, probably against the Hurricanes, to be honest. Hence why the Hurricanes will be 4th and not 3rd or 1st. Because their first ever win was against the Hurricanes, I believe. So Moana's got their number. They know how to beat the Hurricanes, you know. The Drew at 9th, the Force at 10th, and the Highlanders 11th. And similar to your reasoning, I think the Force and the Highlanders will actually look better this year, but the competition as a whole is better. And so there'll be a few times where they'll get close, but just won't get over the line to get the wins.
Yeah, I love it. Look, we've got Blues, Crusaders, Moana, Highlanders all finishing in the same position. So 1, 6, 8, 11. So interesting. We will come back at the end of the season and see how wrong we were, but that is our predictions for now. Last little point, fantasy is obviously coming to Super Rugby, which I think is a much needed invention. I do fantasy for the NRL, and I think it's one of the best ways to get people involved, to get people going. So I'm really excited for this to come out. So expect to see some more content around that as well, because I love a bit of fantasy. We will probably be playing, setting up teams and making sure that my team finishes Husey, because I'll stack it with the Hurricanes and he'll stack it with the Tars, and the Tars will come last again. But that is very exciting. And again, we talk about innovation and, you know, new ideas and stuff coming through the rugby world, and I just think this is a great little addition to, you know, it may not be smooth this year. It's the first time they've ever done it, but it's building in the right direction. To have these things
Absolutely.
is exactly what you need in the world of rugby. There we go. We're not far away from Super Rugby kicking off, aren't we? We like
No, we're
2
not.
weeks?
We are 10 days.
10 days
the
away.
14th, Valentine's Day.
And who we got? The Crusaders versus the Hurricanes kick us off. How that is so lovely.
And followed by the Waratahs Highlanders.
Oh, look at both our
In the
teams in
same day.
actions early. Love that.
Yep.
All right, well, who's got the bye first up now that we have byes?
I believe it's the Reds.
Reds, it does. Oh, interesting. Does that mean we don't have byes during the season now? Surely we don't have like a...
As in, looking here, we do have week 7 of 16 owned. There's only 4 games instead of 5.
As long as, we're not getting like 2 games
And then I
instead
think
of
that,
6.
and then week 13 there's 4 games instead of 5. Week 15 there's 4 games instead of 5. So there's 3 weeks where we only have 4 games instead of 5.
I can live
pretty
with
good.
that. I can live with that. Again, I don't see the reason for it, but I can live with that at least. But yeah, so 10 days away from that, 7 days away from, or even less than that, away from the second round of Six Nations. A lot going on in the rugby world. Make sure you stay tuned with myself and Husey as we run through it all. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back again next time. See you later. Goodbye.
Peace.